Hey, it is Xennial Gamer, and we're back with part 3 of the account showcase. Today we're going to be doing wind monsters. So I'm going to jump straight into it. We're going to be starting off with Ramahan, the Wind Inagami. Specifically, I use him for rune farming in Alunia, and then I use him once in a while in Siege on 4-star bases against Ajir, Tiana, Scoble defenses. So he's going to be in defense, crit damage, defense. You can see there's a couple of runes that still need some grinds, but overall this is about where his build will finish out at. Next up we've got Naomi, the 2A Wind Martial Cat. She is going to be in Guard, Nemesis, Revenge, Attack, Crit Damage, Attack. Obviously, her crit rate is very low because her passive gives her 100% crit rate whenever you attack a monster with harmful effects. I have used her in the past in GB10, and I've tested her out a little bit in Water Rift. I'll also mention that in the Special League, the 4-star Special League that happened a few months ago, I ran into her in Guardian 2, and she was really potent there. You just have to rune her and speed tune her a little bit differently than I have her set up here. Obviously, this is more of a PvE build. Okay, next up we have Sophia, and Sophia is runed entirely for my GB10 runs. It's the only place I use her. I'll put an info card on the screen if you want to see how we got to this build. Next up we have Chasun. She's going to be in Destroy, Endure, and Nemesis. Obviously with Chasun, you'd prefer to have her in Violent runes. Now I use her just once in a while in Siege because she's not a consistent usage monster for me. That's why she's not in a better Violence set. I've tested her occasionally in various PvE contents as well, such as the Dimensional Hole, but I don't think she's currently in any of those teams right now. Okay, next up we've got Xingxi. He's going to be in Violent Destroy, and he is used in a Siege defense for me, and he's used occasionally in Siege offense as well. Now, if I could change one major thing on his build, it would be to give him max resistance. If you've ever encountered like a Xingxi Theomar's Harmonia on Siege defense or something similar on Arena defense with a 4th monster, when the Xingxi is in resistance build, they are really difficult to deal with. When he's not, the Xingxi falls much faster. A little bit more crit rate might be nice as well, but I will note that this is just shy. It's like 99.8% efficiency, so he's a very stat-hungry monster, and it is kind of hard to get him everything that he needs. Okay, next up we've got Ravidi. Ravidi's going to be in Violent Guard. I ruined Ravidi after the buff, but I really have just never played around with him. And I think he's got potential to be a pretty decent monster in Siege. It's just one of those things where I just haven't gotten to it yet. And he's going to be in Speed, Defense, and Defense. Oh, I need to just jump back. I don't think I showed the Xingxi is in Speed, Crit Damage, and HP, which is probably fairly obvious from the stats. Okay, so next up we've got Copper. Copper being in Defense, Crit Damage, Defense, just like pretty much every other Copper in the game. Okay, so my Copper does about 60,000 damage in guild content in this build. For G3, that's about the lowest you really want to have your Copper. It's about 58 to 60k. Next up we've got Railsberg, or however you pronounce it, the Wind Barbarian King. He's going to be in Speed, Crit Damage, and Attack. I actually use him in Labyrinth once in a while. I really can't use him. I'd like to use him more in guild content, but he's just not tanky enough in this build in order to be usable in guild content. Okay, next up we've got Charlotte, and Charlotte's going to be in Despair Blade, Speed, Crit Damage, Attack. She is in all of my TOA teams. She's in my Hall of Heroes team. Actually just did the video on that today. She's a little squishy and a little slow for higher level Guardian Siege. But if you have the right the right team that you're fighting her against, like if the other team is all water monsters and they're not going to attack her, then she can be a really good PvP monster. She is probably a little bit low on accuracy. If you could get her up over 50, that would be better when you consider that her skills 2 and 3 are both AoE and both have debuffs on them. Okay, next up we've got Mav. Mav is built entirely for my Rift teams. So he's going to be in Violent Fight, he's in Attack, Defense, Attack. The runes really don't matter here, basically. If you're using Mav for Rift, all you need to do is make sure he's the slowest monster on your team. You need him to act last, and make sure he's got enough HP and defense to survive. Okay, next up we've got my first Lucian. This one's an 100% crit rate. Obviously, he's just primarily used in PvE. He's going to be in Rage Guard. Next up, we've got the first of 4 Skogles. This Scoble is in Shield, Will, and Energy, so I use him very frequently. I use this Scoble probably every single siege, and I would use him probably at least once every other Guild War, if not more often than that. Basically, Shield, Will is what you use to counter Orion, and so he gets used in a lot of Orion counters for me. All of my Scobles are going to be right around 100% resistance. I do put a lot of defense on my Scobles. I think a lot of people go all out HP and forget about defense, but if you're using your Scobles for offense, a lot of times a Scoble is a great counter to Perna or to Kamoon or to other fire nukers. I would recommend trying to get at least 600 defense on your Scoble before you put all the HP in there. And then don't forget about speed. Obviously Scoble is going to be on a triple HP build, but you do want to make sure they have enough. I go for at least 170 speed on each of my Scobles. None of the other stats matter whatsoever. If you throw a little accuracy on there because this skill 1 reduces attack bar, that's cool, but not super necessary. Okay, now we've got the second Lucian. This one is actually like my primary Lucian. He's on all of my farming teams that use a Lucian anyway. For a 2-man team, occasionally in a 4-star base, I'll use Dova with Lucian. And even though this one's not 100 crit rate, I pretty much only use him when the enemy has water monsters, or at least the key damage dealers on the enemy side are water monsters. And then he does a lot more damage than the other Lucian does. Okay, next up we've got Delphoid. Delphoid is going to be in Energy, Energy, Endure, and Will. Now, one thing you might or might not have noticed, when I do a lot of these triple 2 sets, there is a lot of times Will runes in them. And that's because it can be difficult. Like, let's say you're making a Violent Will set. You need all the runes to fit together. It's like a giant jigsaw puzzle, right? So it can be tricky to put together a really good Violent Will set or a really good Swift Will set. But when you're doing a triple 2, it's much easier to use those high efficiency will runes that you have, the slots 1s, 3, and 5s that may not fit because you're trying to use a bunch of 1, 3, and 5 from your 4 set as well. And so this is a good way to build a lot of siege monsters and build a deeper siege box and have a lot more will runes is with these triple 2 sets. So with that said, Delphoid is in the triple 2 with will runes. You'll notice she's really heavy defense, so the build is actually speed, defense, HP. And again, this is just an occasional siege monster for me. If I'm doing a lot of 4-star bases, she's a great option with the AoE cleanse and heal, or excuse me, AoE cleanse and immunity, and then that skill reset. Okay, so next up we've got Imacetti, and I use Imacetti almost every Guild War, almost every siege. He's part of my Copper Dozer Imacetti team. And so he's going to be in Determination, Nemesis, and Will. Now there's a lot of different ways that you can build Imacetti. A lot of people will build him Swift so that they can guarantee they take first turn. Other people will build him Despair so that they get a little bit of crowd control while you're waiting for your Dozer or your Copper to cycle. The most important thing is that he has Will. The types of teams that you're going to counter with Dozer, Imacetti, Copper, they usually will cap out around 230, 235 speed. If you have your Imacetti to over 240, then you're usually pretty safe that you'll be able to take first turn. Okay, next up we've got Tiana. She's going to be in Violent Endure. Now Tiana is much better in Violent Nemesis, but I wasn't able to get her to max resistance in Violent Nemesis. Actually, she's not even max resistance in the Violent Endure right now. So ideally with your Tiana, it would be somewhere upwards of 42, 43,000 HP in Violent Nemesis in a max resist build. That's like the dream Tiana right there, but of course it's really hard to get those stats. And then the main thing with Tiana's speed is you usually want her to act last on your team, but you don't want a big speed lag. So if your whole team is around 235 speed, then you'd want Tiana around 230 to 232. Okay, next up we've got Aquila. My Aquila is going to be in Swift Will. This is just a once in a blue moon 4-star siege base monster for me. He's going to be in speed, HP, and defense. And that's the type of build you want to go. Speed, HP, HP, speed, defense, HP. Anything like that is fine for Aquila. He's basically there just to strip if you're nuking in a 4-star siege base. Next up, we've got Katarina. She's in one of my core cleave teams, which is the Queb Bell Katarina team. She's going to be in Rage, Will, Attack, Crit Damage, Attack. That is by far and away the best and probably only correct build for Katarina. From there, you just put as much offense into her as you can. But of course, try to get a little bit of tankiness in there as well, just in case you take a couple of hits. You'll have will runes, but you still can't die through those will runes. As far as speed tuning, you just need to make sure she's faster than your Belager and of course slower than the Queb. The other place that I do use Katarina is in Labyrinth. I use her in my Leos team. Okay, next up we've got the second Scoble. You'll notice once again the high resistance. The HP of all my Scogles is pretty close, right around 42k. This one's going to be in Guard Energy Will. With Scoble, honestly, I think that's a great place to use a lot of runes that you wouldn't use anywhere else. That's why you'll see stuff like Guard and Energy, because Scogle's rune requirements are so easy to fulfill. You just need to give him a bunch of HP, a bunch of resistance, a little defense, and you're done. So you get to take those high, and some speed as well, of course. So you take those high efficiency runes that don't really fit on a lot of other monsters, find the ones with the biggest HP subs, and put them on your Scogle. Okay, so next up we've got my third Scogle. You'll see right again, I'm going to go back to the second Scogle. So right again, we're pretty similar, almost identical HP, a little bit less defense, and a little bit less speed. So I've mentioned this in other videos. I think that using Violent Scogles on offense is a terrible idea because you're introducing RNG that could really backfire on you. One of the biggest benefits of Scogle is his passive, which is that the cooldown of his skill 2, the Atlas Stone, decreases every time he's attacked. So I bring Scogle in against fire nukers that are going to hit my Scogle and allow me to turn cycle that Atlas Stone even faster. If you have a Violent Scogle on offense and you throw the Atlas Stone and proc and it comes back down, you lose the benefit of that passive and you're stuck waiting 3 more turns until, and then you're stuck waiting 3 more turns until you can use your Atlas Stone again. Now with that said, Violent Scogles are usually better for defense just because Violent everything is better for defense. This particular Scogle, the Violent Nemesis Scogle, is one I use on siege defense and never use on offense. Now we're going to reach the last Scogle, and this one's kind of cool. He's in a triple tolerance set. Now if I use him with a resistance lead, let's say I use him with Jean, now I've got 71 resistance added to my whole team, which makes it a full-blown resistance team, even with no resistance runes anywhere. Okay, so next up we've got Odin. So this Odin will do just shy of 45,000 damage in Guild War, or just about 41,000 in Arena. And he's still got an effective HP of a little over 100,000. He's going to be in Fatal Shield, which is not obviously the recommended build for Odin. Some people will tell you Violent, and if you've seen a bunch of my videos, you know I'm just not a big fan of RNG, especially on offense. I prefer control and to know what to expect. So I would rather see Odin on on Rage Will. Or Fatal Will, it's really all about which one you can do more damage with. The set bonus from Rage is slightly better, but if your rune efficiency is higher in Fatal, then you wind up doing more damage there. Violent Odin does make sense in some situations. Again, defense. If you're using like a Commune Odin Bastet defense, Violent Odin is definitely the better way to go. But if you're using him a lot on offense, then I'd rather see the higher damage output that you can achieve with Rage or Fatal than what you're going to get with Violent. Think that most Tianas, for example, tend to cap out around low 40k unless you're fighting like a really strong G3 player. So if your Odin is doing 41, 42,000, that's enough to one-shot a Tiana. If it's doing 35,000, it's not going to kill the Tiana. It's probably going to proc her Nemesis and allow her to heal up, and it changes the whole texture of the fight. Now, Will runes would be much, much better for me here. I wish he was in Fatal Will, but if you take a look at this shield rune, this is 117% rune. It's the single highest rune I have. So to get the stats I wanted on my Odin, we wound up in Fatal Shield. Okay, next up we've got Triton. Triton is in Despair Will. He's going to be in Speed, Defense, and Accuracy. Okay, next up we've got Akamana Mir, or something like that, but the Wind Ifrit. But he is going to be in Attack, Crit Damage, and Attack. Okay, next up we've got Teshar. My Teshar is going to be in Rage Destroy, Attack, Crit Damage, Attack. Obviously, Attack, Crit Damage, Attack is the way to go for most PvE monsters in my mind. So Teshar I really use only in some of the secret dungeons. He can be really useful if there's a lot of water monsters out there. I like using Rauk and Water Homunculus in the secret dungeons, but when you're farming water, then Teshar makes for a better option. Okay, next up we've got Orang, and the Orang is going to be in Guard, Focus, Energy, Attack, Crit Damage, Attack. And she was ruined actually just for a test on Necro, if I recall. So I'm not currently using her for anything yet. She's a really good monster. I just need to change her into a different build, and I will find a use for her, because she is a really good monster. Okay, next up we've got Ciara. This is another one of my highest efficiency sets. And so Ciara is going to be, of course, in Violent Will, Speed, Attack, and HP, which is really the only, I won't say the only correct build, but it is definitely the most prevalent build for Ciara, and in my eyes, it's the best build. You'll notice I don't have a big crit rate Ciara. There's two ways to build Ciara. You can build her super tanky like I have her, or you can build her with tons of crit rate. Now the crit rate Ciara turn cycles like crazy, and she is just really hard to deal with, but she's obviously going to die a little bit quicker. And so it all comes down to how you use your Ciara. Now I use mine more than anywhere else in Arena, although of course I use her in almost every Siege and Guild War, because she is just a crazy great monster. But the place that I use her the absolute most is going to be in Arena. So in Arena, for me, it's more important that she can take a hit or two from a Perna if I don't manage to nuke out the enemy team. And it's more important that she can do enough damage to kill some things off. And obviously the accuracy is essential. So I went for a tankier build with crit rate. So right now she's at about 150k effective HP. Previously, she was about 170k effective HP, and for whatever reason, there's a huge difference between those two. She just dies off a lot more frequently. At 170k effective HP, I was able to withstand 3 hits from Perna, and I wouldn't die until the 4th, the second Flame Nova, the second skill 2. Now I'm dying on that 3rd hit from Perna. So that does make a big difference because of the amount that Perna's proc, and so for what it's worth, I would recommend if you're going with a tankier build with Ciara, 170k effective HP should be your goal. Okay, next up we've got Ganny. My Ganny's also going to be in Violent Will, and he's going to be in Speed HP, which is the best build for him. I like my Ganny to actually be speed tuned with strippers. And you've already seen my Barbers at 255 speed. My Lauren's going to be in the low 260s. You'll see in the light video, which is why Ganny's at 250. Okay, next up we've got my Argon, and Argon is currently used in Water Rift, which is why he's really slow. So we've got him in Fatal, Nemesis, Attack, Crit Damage, Attack. Just put out as much damage as we can, and then he's speed tuned with that team. Next up, we've got Michelle. My Michelle is going to be in HP, Crit Damage HP. She's in a Swift build. And I know that's kind of weird to see HP in Swift. So there were a couple of things about this. One was that that particular HP rune is super high efficiency and I couldn't really use it anywhere else. And I didn't want to put a crazy high efficiency rune set on Michelle because I don't use her much. So it was a great place to use a really good rune that couldn't be used on any other monster. I'm going to be testing her in my Tartarus auto team in replacement of Iona, and it allowed me to just put in a little bit of extra damage when we're talking about longer auto fights. Okay, next up we've got Diana, who's going to be in Violent Will, HP, Crit Rate HP. The best build for Diana would obviously be HP, Crit Damage HP, but that only works if you can get 100% crit rate in subs, and then you're talking about just a crazy, crazy high efficiency build. So where you're more likely to do that is in RTA, where we have the separate runes now, because Diana's primarily an RTA monster. I do use her once in a while in Siege. She's kind of fun to use. She's a nice counter to Theomars or to some other water monsters, Mina even. Shihu, not that you see Shihu on defense a lot, but if you do, she just rips him up. Okay, next up we've got Yen, who's going to be in Guard Will Blade. Yen is a crazy good monster and really deserves better runes and a good rune set. And I'll need to fix her into something later. I just haven't gotten to that yet. Okay, next up we've got Leo, who's in Vampire Blade. Ideally with Leo you would have absolutely no plus speed, but this was the single slowest set that I was capable of building. I just pulled Leo about a month ago, and mostly I'm using him in Labyrinth right now because he's not skilled up. I don't use him in PvP, so I don't know if I'm going to need to tweak this set a little bit later. I think his HP might be a little bit low, but the overall stats seem to be, I think, a good starting place to test him out at. Okay, next up we have Tiana, who was actually the last Nat 5 that I pulled. I was super, super excited to get her. She was like my #1 wanted monster. I immediately ruined her. And then I realized that I don't have a lot of monsters that synergize well with her. And she wouldn't really work at Guardian level arena at this speed. She would certainly do great in Guild Wars and Siege at this speed, just not at Guardian level arena. One thing I was happy about is I was able to get her into Swift Nemesis, so if I get outsped and she gets targeted first, she's going to gain that attack bar to make up for that 10 or so missing speed. Okay, and then as we did with the Fire Showcase, I'm just going to run through real quick the wind monsters that I don't have runed and why. Now, Eileen is actually not a bad monster. I've used her in Water Rift at times. There are some areas of the game where she does well. Shakan, on the other hand, I just didn't find him to be useful at all. Tyrannus is obviously a freaking amazing monster, and he's one of the next monsters I want to skill up, but right now he's unskilled. Luis, Pungbake, Ethna, Ritesh, Eladriel, Lagmaron, all of those are unskilled, which is why I don't have them ruined. As I mentioned in the last video, I don't like to put good runes on a monster that's not skilled, and I don't like to use a monster that doesn't have good runes. Now this Malite, I actually built him just because I had the skill ups and I wanted to test him out. Defense, crit damage, defense, and the crit damage is the key there because he can actually do pretty good damage. But I feel like he's close. Like if they went in a balance patch and they gave him a passive that gave him like 50 resistance, for example, or if they boosted his base speed, or I don't know, he doesn't need a huge buff. He needs a little buff, but just something to make him a little bit more special, I guess, and he'll wind up being a good monster. Probably the only gargoyle I could say about that. The others are not even close. Okay, so next up we've got the Christina, and I've never felt she was a really good monster. I know Sean B has done some videos on her. He really likes her. I know Ace thinks she's a great monster, and I do want to play around with her more. I haven't actually done much testing with her since she was buffed, so eventually I am going to rune her and test her again, and hopefully I'll be proven wrong and it turns out she's a great monster. But even watching the other videos, I feel like she's one of those monsters that it's a lot of work and not a guaranteed win. But we'll see. I hope she turns out to be good. The Wind Twins are both pretty... Well, Zenobia, since the twins have been buffed, Zenobia's claim to fame was the speed lead in Guild War, and now that Shayna doesn't reduce attack bar, I don't think Zenobia really has much use at all. Michelle is great for Water Rift. I just haven't... I haven't been able to skill her up yet, actually, and you can't really use her in Water Rift without skill ups. Or you can, but there's better options than her unless you have the skill ups. The Olivia, I built a long time ago, but I prefer Imicetti for my Copper Dozer team, so she's just not currently ruined. Briand was built for some TOAH testing, don't use him anymore. That Lucian I just recently built because I was able to skill it up. It's a third Lucian, and at some point I will rune it. I just haven't figured out what I'm going to do with it yet. Shimite was one of the most recent monsters I built. He will get ruined soon, just haven't done it yet. And Ardella was like one of the very first monsters I 6-starred for GB10. Okay guys, so that is it for today's Win Monster Showcase. As always, thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video, and we'll see you next time with the LDs. Hey guys, if you enjoyed the video, please pop that subscribe button over on the left. It shows me that you enjoyed the video, but more importantly, it shows me that you found the information useful and hopefully it helped you in your gameplay. So here's the deal, you pop subscribe and I'll keep popping out content. Thanks guys.